Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to another webinar on this series of the Energy Network community. The series has been designed as a knowledge sharing platform, and obviously we know it's hard to stay on top of latest news, information, technology, all that kind of stuff alongside everything else that you need to get done. Don't feel you need to take any notes. You don't need to take it all in straight away either. We'll be sending out a recording as always, and you're welcome to share that recording with anyone else in your organization. Also, if you feel you need to ask any questions, do put them in the Q&A. We will have a look at those and have some time at the end. Joining me today, I do have Luke. He'll be looking and keeping an eye on that, and letting me have those at the end of the session. Hi, I'm Michael, for those that don't know. I am a CISC qualified consultant, member of CISEC, which is the Chartered Institute of Information Security. So today we are going to be looking at what's in the current landscape. We've had some feedback that say it'd be really good if we can have a look at what's been going on, keep an eye on things, and if we can give you any good guidance or lessons learned from that. So we're going to be doing some of that pretty much in all of these webinars now. We're going to be looking at the implications of the Cybersecurity Resilience Bill. There's been some updates to that, which might be useful. Main topic of today, the value of proactive cyber risk management, and why you might want to be proactive about it as opposed to knee-jerk and reacting to incidents when they happen. And also, based on some comments, feedback, and some other things we've been doing with some of our customers, we've got a few service developments and things like that we've been doing that will hopefully be able to help you guys out and be able to take some of our service packages to people and say, you know, we've got this thing that Bedroq are able to provide for us in a fairly nice package way. So we're going to be looking at that as well. You'll know anything about us. We've been working in mission critical IT and OT for the best part of 2 decades, and working in highly regulated organizations, finance, law enforcement, that type of thing. So the webinars up to the last probably year have been focused on cybersecurity. We'll be looking at the differences between IT and OT, looking at some real world incidents, and how those overlap between cyber threats, health and safety, those types of things. So we've got some really good previous information and webinars. Do go look at those. You can always reach out to Luke if you need a bit of direction on that. So what's been happening? Probably one of the biggest things, and actually we've had some customers get in touch with us saying, oh gosh, could this happen to us? So it was pretty pertinent that was already going to be talking about it. And that is the attack on Polish energy renewable facilities that happened in December 2025. That culminated in at the end of December on the 29th. We'll be talking a little bit about that and what's happened and the kind of lessons that we can take away from that and learn from it. Also, the second reading and some further development of the Cybersecurity Resilience Bill. So we talk a little bit about that and try and decipher what's going on there. So the attack on Polish energy assets targeted numerous wind and solar farms all at the same time, a private company in the manufacturing sector as well, and also a combined heat and power plant, which supplies heat to nearly 500,000 customers. In Poland, as we said, things that, you know, kind of culminated on the 29th of December across all 3 of those areas, specifically designed to stop these energy sites functioning. And that attack resulted in the loss of communication between the facilities themselves and the actual distribution. So in the case in the UK, that may be a case of the actual, say, wind farm, and then between that and the onshore or substations, should I say. It's that kind of example in the UK as to where that happened. Targeted at least 30 wind and solar farms. As I said, the attacks were purely destructive in nature. They weren't designed to try and get money or ransomware or anything like that. These were designed to stop this systems working. Interestingly, and quite rare for this arena, the attacks, as I said, not ransomware, not accidentally transferred from IT to OT as such or incidentally. These were designed to attack IT systems and physical industrial systems as well. As I said, that's pretty rare, really, in this sector, and designed, as I said, to completely destruct and destroy everything. So we'll do a little bit of a tech dive. This was quite a big report. If you want to go look it up yourself, you can. Just look for Polish energy asset, and you'll find it. It's by the Polish CERT, so it's PCERT. You can go find that report easily. Have any problems, give us a shout, we can send it to you. So it's quite a big report, and we could spend numerous hours on that. So we're just going to do a very quick overview on the technical and the kind of operational, and some lessons learned on that. So the attack started with compromised, unpatched firewalls months prior to the attack, and we'll see some of those kind of timelines in a minute. But once they'd taken control of those devices, took advantage of unpatched firewalls with some default credentials, they were able to take a copy of the configuration, have a look at it, found weak SSL VPNs. If people don't know what they are, they're basically you go to a web page and log in. So some of you might do that for work. Banking's an example, but obviously that's very secure. When they looked at that, they found there was a landing page, which people might be used to. It had bookmarks to jump servers. And some of you might have that in your own systems where you log in, you get a web page, it's got some links to the jump servers you use to get into your assets, and you'll click it, and then you'll have to go through some process of logging in. These had those usernames and passwords hard-coded. So all they had to do was press that link. Right, I'm now logged into this terminal server or this jump server. I can now get myself around these assets. So they took advantage of that. From there, they used their knowledge of certain types of SCADA kit. And so they knew how to destroy the different types of equipment. So for example, Hitachi RTUs, remote terminal units, they knew they could upload corrupt firmware and it would accept it, and then it would just be dead. Because obviously if it hasn't got a proper operating system to work, it doesn't work. They also were able to upload or delete file systems by logging in via SSH as well. So that's logging into the device and coming into its little terminal prompt and typing in commands. They're able to log into that, delete the file systems from a bunch of Hitachi control and protection relays. Once they stop working, you've got no control and protection, have you? You've no idea what's going on with your assets anymore. Unpatched HMIs using Windows 10 still, using default Windows credentials using RDP, plus some of the credentials they learned from stealing the configuration off the firewall. They installed scripts on those HMIs as well that made connections back to the actor. That allowed for reconnaissance. And then on the 29th of December, they finished off by obviously destroying all that equipment all at once, one after another, and then delivering a malicious payload on that HMI. And that wasn't ransomware. It was designed to delete the file system and just kill that HMI entirely. Finally, there was a bunch of Moxa serial servers. So these devices you may know of because they will often be in our case, in the UK, the connection between your SCADA systems and grid, for example, can often be done with serial still, and these devices are part of that. So default credentials to the web interface, factory reset them in that web interface. If anyone's ever used any piece of IT or OT equipment of that nature, you know there's a button there, press factory reset. That's now not working anymore. So yeah, quite a lot of things which have led up months previous, led them to be able to do that in a single day on the 29th of December. To those 30 wind and solar assets. In terms of the combined heat and power plant, again, objectives and the MO was pretty much the same. Sabotage with irreversible damage. In this case, the access IT systems using some stolen information from an earlier attack in March to July-ish. What's interesting about that is you should always learn from earlier attacks. People like LastPass and others did the same thing, didn't they? Where they had an earlier attack, things happened, rather than going, right, we now need to make sure that whatever information could be part of that attack can't be used later. They didn't do that, and therefore they the attacker could come in later and take as much information as they wanted. Interestingly, they did have some EDR, so some endpoint protect, that saw that happening where they were accessing those systems, because it's in the report that that was the case, but nothing was done about it. So this thing was taking all these logs, but nobody was looking at it and nobody was reacting to it. And it looked like that once compromised, the attack looked to initiate some scripts on those machines. So because they're scripts, they're written bits of application or software, for lack of a better word, and not viruses that could be picked up by virus protection, then it wasn't seen. It was only really the EDR saw something wiping or changing files, and therefore he went, oh gosh, what's going on there? And then it stopped it. But you know, that there was a system there, and it was either not configured as well as it could be, and people weren't looking at it. And finally, the attack on the manufacturing sector. The report does state that this manufacturing sector has nothing to do with this energy sector, but it's hard to say. Exactly the same MO, attacked a vulnerable firewall, executed scripts to enable a VPN back to themselves. Once they moved inside, they accessed a domain, very similar scripts to what was set up on the power plant, designed to wipe machines and delete everything. Also, within that, they found credentials that allowed them to gain access to cloud services. So therefore, the attacker went there. Now, they were looking at reconnaissance here. They were looking at files, emails, things related to the OT network modernization, which this company must do, looking at what SCADA systems have been accessed, technical work had been carried out, you know, were there any credentials shared via email, for example? There could have been lots of things. It's not really detailed in the report to that level, but it's certainly interesting to know that lots of information gathering happened there. So maybe it was a lot more relevant than maybe the report suggests. So quite a lot happening. And at the end of it, there's around about 5 pages of MITRE ATT&CK TTPs, their tactics, techniques, and procedures. A little bit different to what you might have heard from other establishments that talk about indicators of compromise. It's a little bit different because this is looking at maybe specific tactics, different techniques that people use, and the procedures they use to access systems, because from what we learn from these types of attacks, and they get put into the MITRE ATT&CK kind of matrix, if you like. Well worth going and having a look, as opposed to indicators of a compromise, which are what are the kinds of things that are in log files or in firewalls that what you look at or your software looks at can go, oh, that looks like something bad happens. That's an indicator of compromise, a little bit different to this. There were 5 pages, so I can't go through all those. But as a bit of a set of key takeaways from this, unpatched firewalls, weakly configured remote access, which is rife. Also, remote access that you don't even know exists from some third parties that look after bits and pieces of your system. Hard-coded credentials, which made it super easy for people to just press a button and be in. Weak and default credentials on hardware and devices should be an absolute no-no, but it's there, and it's not unique to here either, because there's been other attacks in other areas where it's been found that they've got default credentials on things. And badly configured equipment, so leaving default services like remote desktop, like file transfer protocol, so FTP enabled on devices. That stuff can be switched off. Yes, you might need to switch it on if you were to say upload some firmware to a device, and then you would switch it off afterwards. You shouldn't leave it switched on all the time. No asset monitoring in the case of the wind farms, and then yes, there was monitoring an EDR, which is endpoint detection and response, in some other areas, but there was no proactive monitoring of that, no escalation in the business that could have seen that right at the beginning when the reconnaissance was happening and be able to stop it there before it led to this escalated path to where bad things have happened. Attackers here are not using any special hacking. They're not firing extensive ransomware. They're not tricking humans here into doing things such as revealing passwords over the phone and things like that. They're just using live off the land techniques, learning as they go, collecting that information and using it later, taking advantage of people's inexperience in building, maintaining, securing these ICS and SCADA systems. So yes, reads quite for a sorry story really, of things that these days shouldn't be here. But when you've got legacy kit, or you've got kit that's older than say a decade, that started to use IT and IT in terms of networks and switches, so OT networks using these bearers and using IP addresses to communicate, but not really using the practices that are common within IT environments. These things can happen. Other things, as we said, the Cybersecurity Resilience Bill, it had its second reading. We talked about the first reading on the last webinar. Nothing particularly exciting happens there. Second reading goes a little bit further on and is now at committee stage. So that basically means a step-by-step breakdown of the bill over numerous meetings, of which they're about halfway through those at the moment. There's still a few more to go. Those committees include obviously representative of government, which makes sense, MPs, those types of people. Expert agencies within government organisations, Ofcom, Ofgem, DesNZ, which some of you will recognise because you come under those guys. Other agencies like the NHS, but also representatives and experts from industry, Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet, NCC Group, who do pen testing and things, but Amazon, other organisations, ICS2 for those people that understand what that is, SciSec, the business, the organisation that I kind of are affiliated to, and people like that. So they're there as well, giving their feedback, answering questions about how it might function and things like that. I think one thing that was really interesting was a quote that was in there from a couple of days ago. That it says, when it comes to technology, not only is supply chain vulnerabilities systemic, after all, we've got all these legacy kit lying around with all sorts of remote access, but it also causes a significant risk to UK and global business. And people like ransomware, threat actors, cyber criminals, they're looking from a one-to-many model because obviously they want to make money easily, or they want to do damage easily. What we've learned as well is that people like the M&S, the Co-op, Jaguar Land Rover, funnily enough, they all use the same IT provider, for example. So they're gonna, rather than hit those entities separately, we're just going to hit one entity, and that will continue to give us access to various different organizations that we want to target. In terms of anything and clarifications so far, I think one of the biggest things and the biggest concerns, certainly from some of our customers, was around how do I know if I'm suddenly going to become either an OES or a critical supplier? In terms of critical suppliers, there were a couple of clarifications around what could be considered a critical supplier. You've got to supply to an operator of essential services. So even if you're quite small, but you do supply to bigger entities, you could potentially be a critical supplier. That supplier must engage in important network and information systems. So the people who deliver the air conditioning probably won't come in it, for example, but there may be others that do. If they supply your SCADA systems, for example, and have access to that. And the disruption to that supplier would have a material disruption to you guys or whatever. So that third party's ability to either help you, or what can happen is that third party is used to access you. And also that disruption will be sufficiently severe to impact its ability to help you as well. So it's those four things. Now at the moment, there's not really any clarity as to whether you would still be one or not. It sounds like potentially it would be the OES or the big supplier that would say, okay, you're important enough to me, I'm going to designate you a critical supplier. But there's still some clarifications yet still to be done on whether you would be one or not. It will be the duty placed on those DCSs. That'll be set in secondary legislation. So there's nothing in this about that, and even any changes to it won't specifically be about that. It'll be a second set of legislation. So it may be that we're going to have to sit and wait and get more clarity later, which is a bit pain. But yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on that. I'll be collating what I can find and asking those questions, and hopefully bring some more clarity in further webinars. So let's move on to the main topic, which is about proactive risk management. So why should we be proactive? Well, I'm sure if anyone's been part of any incident, it's usually the old incident, panic, contain, recover, and then let's lessons learned and find out what we're wrong and how we can not do it next time. Well, I'm sure if you ask your bosses, ask the boards, it'd be well, we want to reduce the business disruption. In fact, we want no disruption if possible. So the only way to do that is identify those risks early, implement those controls before bad stuff happens, and therefore incidents are either prevented or they significantly reduced in impact. And that's really the message coming from some of these new legislations and things like that. It's about resilience, and you'll hear that a lot. It's about resilience. We're not saying we can get rid of everything, but what we're saying is if things happen, we need to reduce how bad it happens, and we need to be resilient to be able to ride that and get ourselves either in a working position as quickly as possible. Hopefully that's cost efficiencies in over time, isn't it? If we can be proactive and we can have that proactive program of planned spending, we've got those predictable budgets, and really importantly, we're controlling those priorities based on risk. We've got time to do that, which means we've got less legal fees, regulatory fines, the damage, all that good stuff we've talked about for, and we start to look at those risks in a more people-friendly way, so to speak. What's our exposure to phishing? What's our exposure that somebody could be phoned up and accidentally reveal something, or click an email and send some information they shouldn't do? What's our risk of ransomware? You can start to put it in that terms, quantify it, and be able to plan what you're going to do in terms of effort and money. Hopefully a stronger regulatory and audit position. If you can very quickly pull out your processes, your procedures, your pen tests, all those good things, then you get much better audit outcomes, less scrutiny, hopefully better protection for you, your managers, senior teams, all those types of things. Hopefully some improved strategic decision making as well, so leaders, so people are able to understand what that risk actually is, and them start to accept or not accept and want to do something about whatever those risks are. Your technology decisions are not knee-jerk, they're aligned with your tolerances as well, and you put in your investment where it needs to be, which might be in, say, training people, as opposed to tens and hundreds of thousands of pounds on some technologies. So those investment decisions become data-driven instead and look on that impact, and it becomes an enabler, not a blocker. We're looking at competitive advantage for you, better responses to any due diligence questionnaires. We get loads of those because obviously who we work for, and we're happy to have those and respond back to them. It makes it a lot easier having got everything in place, got the whatever, things such as 27,001 in position, and be able to prove it every single year that we have to do that. Faster onboarding with partners, so our ability to, for example, for us to onboard to our customers is quite easy, and obviously it should be easy for you to be able to have an onboarding process to make sure you've got the right people working with you and for you, and hopefully some increased trust thereof, because who you can trust and who your suppliers are. And again, supplier management, that's really going to is really big now, and it's really becoming more apparent as things go by. Hopefully some more cultural maturity within the business too, so that shared ownership of risk, right from board level right down, and in the same way as we talked about in the last webinar on health and safety, everybody shares that and wants to continuously improve and create that long-term resilience that a business needs. So yeah, in terms of that, obviously we've been doing a lot of work, project-based work and things like that with customers, and we might be able to share some of those in the next couple of webinars, because we're just at the back end of those, so we can't really talk about them today. But some of the things we've been asked for, especially from some smaller businesses who need a little bit of help from us, is a couple of things, and that's led us to kind of refine some of our services to make them more packaged, make them where we can have a time bound, and for that time bounding a set cost that you can predict, either in terms of specific gap analysis to specific alignments, so that might be the CAF, it might be 62443, it might be whatever you've been asked for from your customers, such as Cyber Essentials, which is happening a lot now. It may be that you're like, do you know what, we're not actually quite sure, what kind of assessments we need, we're not quite sure what kind of situation either some sites that we've purchased are, or whether or not some things we've rolled out are meeting any requirements. Then that's where kind of like the cybersecurity assessment that I've been doing with quite a few customers recently helps, because that starts off with that scoping, understanding what your locations, your systems, let's explore what frameworks or what your requirements are and your timelines for getting that done. And then having those requirements, the information gathering starts there. understanding what your operational environment is, what your existing pain points are, and helping to fill in those gaps. Then it's basically down to reviewing that documentation, reviewing against maybe whatever system baseline, and it's about looking at the systems and tech that you use, how they're set up, and actually more important, how your people are using it. Can include BC and DR, obviously, supplier selection, and evaluation of staff security awareness. Been doing quite a lot of that, and just doing some training and things with people to make them more aware. Obviously, out of the back of that, identifying and prioritizing what those are, and work with you to assign those priorities, and obviously build that roadmap, and create that proactive program of improvements, and make sure that we look at the ones that will make the biggest difference in protecting your sites and assets. And finally, obviously, documentation. We understand that it's you've got to make sure that you're presenting those levels of exposure very clearly to your business, and qualifying those improvements that can have that biggest impact. We've also been asked from some of our customers about the monitoring of routers, firewalls, and other devices. And yeah, we've been doing that type of thing with our support teams for quite a number of years, like say at least 2 decades, monitoring of firewalls, routers, and looking at the health and the kind of monitoring and status of that hardware. What's clear now is that needs to move to continuous real-time monitoring of what can be huge amounts of data. And we understand that some businesses say, well, actually, we've not really got the technology, and we've not got the capacity to do that. Yes, we've got operations centers running our energy assets, but that's what they're there to do. They're not there to monitor network traffic or logs from OT devices and understand what's going on there. So with that, we also provide a security operations center and SIEM with our security cleared staff that bolt on to our 24/7 support, in order, and that just brings the experience and the expertise directly into your business. So yeah, that's kind of some of the things that we've been up to, and as we said, we've packaged those now into quite succinct chunks of work with certain outcomes, so you can relay those outcomes, you can relay what that cost is for that chunk of help that we're bringing, and yeah, if that's something you may be interested, give us a call. So with that, are there any questions?
Thanks for that, Mick. Yeah, we've had a few questions that I can read out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and hi everyone, I'm Luke. So yeah, good to meet you. Thanks for attending. The first question we've got is, can Bedroq offer similar assessments and solutions for IT, or is it just OT that we specialize in?
Okay. Yeah, no, that's cool. I think what makes us relatively unique in that manner is the fact that as part of kind of the work we've done in the past and stuff like that, and what we do today, and the kind of segments we work in, mean that we work strong in both IT and OT. We've got our teams and our server and data center guys who work a lot with our 365 and our IT customers, as well as our other teams that work alongside the OT environment. So we've got deep understanding of both sides, which I think is really key, especially in some areas where convergence, or certainly even in renewables where it's been built from the ground up, where that kind of IT and OT convergence is relatively common, really. So yeah, whether it sits in IT, OT, and a bit of convergence, then we take a unified approach to that, which is not a problem. And we do have our experts in both if we need to help out.
Perfect, thank you. We've got a second and final question, and that is, do Bedroq monitor firewalls for their customers? I guess that could apply for all manners of network kit as well.
All right,
that's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do. So as we said, like, we monitor everything in terms of physical health and performance, which is more nominal for a support team. They'll be looking at that, and then when they get an alert, say, oh, something's off, they'll go and look into that. And over time, that's very useful, because your ability to fault find is much quicker than a customer ringing up saying something's broken. Then you site visits to find out what's up. And anyone who's ever worked in traditional IT and the way it used to work 10 years ago, so it was more like that, wasn't it? But yeah, we already do that extensively between pretty much all of our clients. Where the seam and the 24-minute sock part comes in, that kind of complements it. That's a logical layer of protection that's above all of that. Whereas the NOC kind of looks after the operational status, the performance of the devices. The seam and sock really deep dive into what's actually happening on those. That's monitoring all of the logs, all the information, everything that's coming to and from any devices. And then building on that, it's all right collecting all that stuff, but you've got to be able to correlate those events and logs between various bits of kit, which help you to detect any suspicious patterns, behaviors, anomalies, that type of stuff. So what does normal look like? And it can learn that. And then now we can see what abnormal looks like. Helps you to identify any of the threats, any configurations, and policy violations too. So if somebody puts a policy in, and if anyone does this, where you go from anywhere to anywhere via any place, then which you really shouldn't be doing, then you'd get an alert on that. And it's real time, and obviously includes investigation and response as well. So yes, both of those two basically form that kind of operational and security capabilities together. One's about infrastructure, make sure it's okay, and the other one is about making sure that everything that's going on under the board is working correctly too.
Perfect. No, thank you.
Fantastic. No problem at all, Luke. No problem at all. If anybody does have any further questions, any queries, want to speak to anyone, just give Luke a call. I'm sure you speak to him already, but if you do need to ask him anything, no problem at all. Or if you want to talk to me as well. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for your time. I know it can be very, very busy, and everyone's always having to react to things going on. So we always appreciate when you spend some time with us. Our next webinar will be coming up in May. So yeah, well into 2026 now, which is fantastic. Again, we'll be looking at the latest news, innovations. We may have some more stuff on the cyber resilience bill, all being well. And yeah, we'll be looking at other things. If anyone does have any ideas or topics and say, really good if you just elaborated on this, or you just spoke about that, again, speak to Luke, speak to me. We'll be able to fit that in and do that maybe on the next one. So yeah, thank you very much, and we shall speak to you next time.